So good. Welcome, everybody. I do want to thank Volvo and ASICS for sponsoring us and all the products that help make us work. Electrolyte is the drink that we're going to have on the LA Marathon, and Goo are the gels that we're going to have on the LA Marathon, and bars at the finish line we're going to have this weekend, Saturday, and even Sunday, from Easy Up bars. And pardon the dog in the background. We took in a neighbor's dog for the day anyway, just to help him out. Tonight's topic is really on two different things. First, I want to cover the fact that after this weekend, this is the third final build week we have. In other words, this week, and we only have two more build weeks that culminate with a 19-mile run and a 20-mile run, or if you're in groups 0 through 4, two more. There's 19 miles this week that they have. We have 18, most of us. They have two 20-mile runs coming up. So not that much more, but really it's not about the long runs on the weekend. It's really about the total volume we do. But this week, try and get in that long run because it's a big part of this week's volume, as well as the 19 and 20 miler or the 2 20 milers that are coming up, depending on what group you're in. But it is the total volume you do the whole season that gives you the fitness that you have for race day. Basically, race day is all about just whatever your fitness is, you just execute that. Wherever your pace is, whatever your ability is, that's what you do on race day. You simply execute where your fitness is. Now, a lot of what we do to build fitness has to do with, and this is my segue, see if this works, has to do with the amount of fat that we consume. Our bodies are efficient at consuming. In other words, when we go at low heart rate, we utilize more fat. When we go at higher heart rate, we utilize more glycogen. Glycogen comes from carbohydrate. So if you're doing all your runs at faster than race pace or even race pace, you're not really focusing as much on fat as what we would like you to do. Now, here's the problem. As you go longer and longer and longer and longer on these long runs, keep in mind, this is training. This is not racing. You want to train your training, race your racing. They're two very, very different things. Just because you're doing everything at race pace doesn't mean you're going to be more efficient. You actually become more efficient with less risk of injury going slower than race pace. And here's one of the reasons. As you go farther and farther and farther on a marathon or any long distance run like we are doing this weekend, and then the two build weeks we have 2 weeks from now and 3 weeks from now, next week is a cutback week. Keep in mind, we have 4 more cutback weeks and this week and 2 more build weeks.
I said you can cancel the cookie order.
Not that much farther to go in this build to the LA Marathon, right? At any rate, so what I wanted to say,
Coach Chat.
what I wanted to say is, as your heart rate is going higher and higher and higher, you're using less and less fat and more glycogen. So as we go longer and longer and longer, because of dehydration and fatigue, your heart rate's going up and up and up and up. And if you don't start at a low enough heart rate, this is true of the marathon, but not as true. And I'll tell you why in a minute. But as your heart rate's going up and up and up, you're using less fat, more glycogen. You're not training your body to use that bigger volume of resource for fuel, which is fat. A smaller volume of resource for fuel is glycogen, which comes from carbohydrate. So obviously, you really want to focus on that bigger reservoir of resource for fuel. You don't actually burn fat. You turn it into ATP, adenosine triphosphate, which is the fuel your body uses. So you're not really burning fat. At any rate, you're consuming it. But so if you don't start low enough heart rate in training, you're not going to be utilizing training that giant fat resource that you really, really need to get to the finish line. Now, that's what we call building endurance. These are endurance runs because you're training that bigger resource for fuel to become more efficient at consuming it. You get more capillary veins and arteries, mitochondria, oxidative enzymes, all things designed to help you become more efficient, have greater fitness, all just general ideas. So here's the other side of the coin. On race day, you want to take in more carbohydrate, but in training, you want to focus on fat. So you don't want to start feeding your machine by just taking in more carbohydrate to create more glycogen, to consume more glycogen. You want to focus not on glycogen consumption, but more on fat consumption. So if you're taking in tons of gels and tons of carbs in liquid form, you're doing yourself a disservice because you're now enabling your body to focus more on glycogen and get through the whole thing with carbs that become glycogen. Glycogen is this honey-like white substance that resides in the muscle. It's disgusting to say this, but it's true. It's what makes meat taste good. It's why we put honey on ham, because we're just adding to more of the same flavor. Got it? So if there was no glycogen in meat, meaning carbs, sugar, really, meat would be really, no one would want it. It wouldn't taste good. So there again, we're getting sugar even in meat. But all right. And somebody wants to go down. Sorry. So on race day, you do want to take in more carbs because it's no longer about training. It's more about getting through the race as fast as you can. And at a slightly elevated heart rate, you can go higher and higher and higher and higher and higher. Your body can start taking in more and more and more and more glycogen. That's one reason we run at marathon race pace on race day the whole way through, and why we want you really, really comfortable and low heart rate to start, especially start these long, long runs, because your heart rate's going to go higher and higher and higher and higher. And you don't want to train glycogen. You want to train fat. Does that make sense? The fat consumption, not glycogen consumption. Hopefully that makes sense. So race day, you want, in terms of carbohydrate consumption, unlike these long runs, where again, you don't want as much carbohydrate consumption. Keep in mind, when people sit for 3-4 hours, you start getting hungry. I mean, you're going to need to take in some kind of food. And the problem is that your stomach, because you're at a higher heart rate, the blood gets diverted out of your stomach. So your stomach becomes less efficient to absorb, to metabolize food, to digest food, right? So you're not going to be able to take in like, a steak or a burger or fries. Will pretty much like destroy your stomach because you don't have enough blood in your stomach to digest it efficiently. Okay. So pardon the neighbor's dog for barking in the background. Anyway, I'm going to ignore that dog. Anyway, it's barking. I don't know. Anyway, so race day, you want to take in more carbs. You need to calculate now where, and I know I've said this before, I'm just saying it again in context with everything else. Unlike training, where you do, after 3-4 hours, you do need to eat something like gels or drink or whatever. And we will have gels out there on right before it's about mile 4, 5. It's about mile 4 something in our training workout. We will have it at mile 4 something. I do apologize for last week. I really did want you guys to go a little longer without taking in gels. And I also did want you to try the gels at race pace, marathon race pace, so you knew that it would be okay for you. And right when you came back, before you went back down the alleyway, that's where you were at marathon race pace. That was the plan for all our runners. Run, walk, and walk, very a little different. I won't go into that. Good grief. Okay. Anyway, my wife just got home. Anyway, where was I? So, you need 40 to 60 grams of carbohydrate per hour. So do the math. Gels like goo, which will be on the course at mile, I want to say it's like 12 and 18, something like that, on the LA Marathon course. It's on the map on the page for the LA Marathon. If you go to lamarathon.com, click on events, click on LA Marathon, cursor way down the page, you'll find the map elevation chart, and the map has, where they're going to have electrolyte, where they're going to have, which is, I think, every mile they'll have electrolyte, and where they're going to have the goo and the gels. And I think goo gels are going to be at like mile 12 and 18, same as before. Anyway, goo is only about 21 to 23 grams of carbohydrate. 21 to 23 grams of carbohydrate. So that's, if you take one goo per hour, that's only 23 of the 40 to 60 grams that you need per hour. So maybe you could take it in once every 40 minutes or so. That would definitely up it a lot. And if you take in electrolyte, like every water table or every other water table, that'll give you 2-3 grams more. If you're at a 10-minute per mile pace, first calculate your pace and how many tables you will reach per hour. Now here's the math. If you're at 10-minute per mile pace, marathon race pace, you're going to hit 6 water tables per hour, right? So at 6 water tables per hour, that would be about anywhere between, I'm just guessing because the volume of the cups that get poured are uneven, that's going to be about 2 to 3 grams per cup, or 6 times 2 is 12, 6 times 3 is 18. So somewhere between 12 and 18 grams per hour that someone at 10-minute per mile pace would take in if they did electrolyte at every water table. That's the drink that we'll have out there. And by the way, electrolyte will be out there at the end of our training run again this Saturday. So you can test that out. Definitely try out electrolyte. They had way more. They had like 450 bottles. They wanted way more than the people they were told who were going to be there, just to make sure everybody at least got 1 bottle. So definitely try it out. More than enough for everybody, no matter when you come in. But there you go, 12 more calories per hour plus 23 is 35. And if you did the gel once every 45 minutes, there you have even more. So do the math. At 10-minute per mile pace, drinking every mile, every water table, the electrolyte, you'd well be in your probably 50 grams per carbohydrate per hour, and you'd be doing well. Most people don't take in enough carbs. They'll do like a gel an hour, and that's like you're halfway there, and they hit the wall, crash, burn, bonk, whatever you want to call it, really because of glycogen depletion. You don't run out of glycogen. Your subconscious brain just gets all this information and data that you're unaware of because it's unconscious, right? Your pancreas, your liver, your kidneys, your gallbladder, all of these vital organs, never ever in your entire life are you aware of. That's all controlled constantly, even when you're asleep, by your subconscious, unconscious mind, whatever you want to call it. These synapses in the brain that are far more voluminous than what you're capable of consciously being aware of, right? So you don't actually run out of glycogen, but your subconscious brain says, okay, shut it down enough. We're getting low here. no more. You can override that certain ways by using emotion to say, I'm going to push myself farther. Keep in mind, if you really did run out of glycogen, you'd still just, be walking and your heart rate would come down and you'd be consuming fat only, But if you did want to override those governors that keep you from utilizing more glycogen when you're running a little low, become emotional. Think of something that just gets you enraged, something that makes you tearful, any emotion, laughing hysterically, any emotion, any scenario or dramatic idea in your head will give you that ability to override those governors to push yourself beyond. You can't just be mentally tough by saying, all right, I will now be mentally tough. That does not work. Try it. It just does not work. There are several other things. That's a past discussion we've had. You can find on our YouTube channel. Several things you can do to help yourself become mentally tough toward the end of the run, but that's not the topic for tonight. I apologize, I kind of diverted off a little. But in general, that's it for really tonight's discussion. That's, try and motivate yourself to not do tons of gels on training runs. If you can get away with one gel, great. If you're, it's always good to have a gel with you in your pocket, and you can pick that up at mile 5. I'm not suggesting you take it in right away. I'm suggesting you try and avoid taking in gels. I know you guys are going to be out there for hours and hours, and you're going to get hungry, and that's going to deplete your ability to run or walk quickly with high energy that you started with. Hopefully you start the marathon at lower energy, even a little bit below marathon race pace, especially going up those massive hills. And don't forget that 2 Saturdays before the Sunday LA Marathon, 2 Saturdays, I think it's like March 3rd, March 4th, something like that. The LA Marathon's Sunday, March 19th. 2 Saturdays before the LA Marathon, we are going to be running the first 6 miles of the LA Marathon. You will notice that right after the Music Center, right after you go up those 2 big hills that go up to Disney Hall on 3rd Street, then you cut over and then 1st Street. Then you go across the Music Center and you take a left, you go way down Temple. These are critical elements. And when you start going back up Temple, when you go underneath that overpass at the bottom, you're going to have a hill that's very much like Amalfi. It's 1.25 miles. It goes solid uphill, just like Amalfi does, but it then goes over the freeway, but it's still uphill, gradual, and then it takes another turn onto a side street, and it's still going up, just like Amalfi. And so take it slow. Get used to going up Amalfi slow, which we are doing Saturday. And then we are going up beyond Sunset. I know I'm still recording. It's okay. I'm going to record the questions as well. I'm almost done. We are going up beyond Sunset. And I got to tell you, for those of you online, watch for this. If you thought the houses south of Sunset that you've passed already, up to our water table at Sunset, if you thought those were big and expensive, you guys ain't seen nothing yet till you see what's north of Sunset. And Amalfi, north of Sunset, becomes Capri. It kind of you take a left turn on Capri, and then it dead ends. And right in front of you is this house, the biggest house I think I've ever seen in my life. It's this black house with windows, and you'll take a left turn at that street there. You go left or right, you will go left and round the corner. It's the same house the whole way, pretty much. And then we'll hit the trailhead, and it's the same house that you will be behind, and you'll see it even better. Check out that house. It is just massive. That's all I have to say. I don't know who lives there or what it's all about, but that house is absolutely massive. With that, I throw open questions and, oh, Paul had to jump off. Sorry, Paul. Let's see if we have anything in the chat first as we get beyond the daisy hellos. Here we go. Oh, that's Lisa, said hi. Galaxy S10 is Lisa. Hi, welcome. Tanya, question, when it says easy on the schedule, and if I check my Garmin watch, it is more a fast walk than a run. So does easy on the schedule mean running or walking fast? This is definitely on a lower heart rate. Absolutely. Tanya, you are correct in saying it is lower heart rate because it's really all about low heart rate. Now, here's the defining thing. If you are in group 0, easy is absolutely a run only. If you are in group 10, easy is generally, run only groups on flat ground. We're talking flat ground. Easy pace for run groups is generally a run, okay? So I'm not crazy about the Garmin watch analysis. It may be a little off, especially if you're using an occipital reader from your wrist band. None of these, even my great Coros watch, which I love, none of them are perfect. The heart rate from a wristwatch, the chest strap is consistently more. Your watch does roll around a little on your even as tight. I just read something. You would have to tighten your wristband so tight that it would cut off the blood flow to your hand in order to really lock in the watch while you're running with it. So it's really not moving at all, right? In order to get a good reading from the watch itself for heart rate. So run walk, easy pace is definitely more walking. You can do a little run here and there, but as soon as your heart rate goes up a little bit, your breathing rate goes up, just shut it down, walk. Walking obviously is this very slow walk for walking groups. So I think that's really how it's defined, is if you're in a run-only group, it's probably just a really, really slow run. Now, here's the problem you have neurologically. And maybe, Tanya, what the problem is that you're asking this question, and why your Garmin says, God, it is so slow, I can't do this as a run. It may be accurate, but I can't do it as a run, so I have to do it as a walk. Here's the problem. Most of the muscles, over half the muscles in your body, like 55% or so, variable, but around 55% or so for us non-pro athletes, about over half the muscles in your body are dormant. They're not used at all. We have these fast twitch muscle fibers that take us faster. We have these slow twitch muscle fibers, which take us slower, and farther, because we're at a lower heart rate, right? So if you don't have slow twitch muscle fibers engaged slow enough that you can run, right, you then may have to resort to walking in order to keep your heart rate that low. So here's how you, here's how you overcome that. Here's how you overcome that. So you can run slower, and engage more slow twitch muscle fibers to enable you to go slower. Is stop yourself, walk really slowly for a few seconds, and then slowly start running faster and faster and faster, maintaining a slow run. Maintain that slow run for a couple minutes. Stop yourself, walk for a few seconds slowly, then slowly start to build up that pace again to a slow pace, as slow as you're capable of doing. And over a period of time in doing this, walking and slowly speeding up, you will start to recruit those dormant, slow twitch muscle fibers that will enable you to run slower. Because I do hear from a lot of people over the years, I can't run that slow. That's why. And I'm just assuming from your question, Tanya, that that is your issue, is you just need to recruit those more of those dormant, slow twitch muscle fibers in order to run slowly. All right, because we do engage slightly different muscles running versus walking. Some similar. So hopefully that is the answer to your question. If not, let me know if that's not your problem. You just can't run that slow. And that's a very common problem. You are definitely not alone. Roxana, so would you not take any gels on the training long runs or just a minimal amount? And if so, what is that amount? When you start getting hungry, that's your body telling you, I need to eat, I'm hungry, I need to do something. I would say, especially on like an 18 miler, if you're in group 0, you're doing a 3-hour marathon, your 19-mile run Saturday is not going to be anywhere near as long as if you are even a walker in walk 6, for example. You could be out there, 6 hours, 15 minutes if you're in walk 6. Doing an 18-miler, you may only be out there about 2 hours and 45 minutes if you're in group 0 run only. I mean, that's a huge variable. That's ridiculous. How wide a variable of abilities we have in the LA Roadrunners, which is great. I love that about us. But it really depends on the group that you're in, the amount of time you're going. I'd say if you're going to be out there for more than 3 or 4 hours, which most of our groups will be this Saturday, you definitely need to take in a gel somewhere just to, kind of keep yourself going. If you wanted to take along, if you were a walker, take some food along with you. You can walk, stop, walk, or just walk really slowly. Let your heart rate come down, stop if you have to, and take in some solid foods where you're getting in even more calories per volume, like a bar that's like 240 calories versus a gel that's only 100 calories. Walkers might be able to digest if they stop, and something more solid, more caloric, and you're going to need that because you're out there longer. So kind of adjust to what you're feeling. If you're hungry, eat. I think that's really, really the bottom line. And hopefully, pardon me, I got the hiccups. Before you get hungry, you'll know yourself, take in a gel, that's okay. In fact, that may be important to do to keep you going. You want to finish your workout with your group. Last week, incidentally, if you lost your group in the alleyway when we were doing marathon race pace, this is for run-only groups. For run-only groups, if you lost your group during the alleyway when we were doing marathon race pace, really go to a slower group. It'll really help you build that fat-burning engine. And even on race day, you got 26 miles of marathon race pace. And if you couldn't keep up for about 2.5 miles marathon race pace during the alleyway segment, after you left the water table, really, really rethink the group you're in, even though you love that group. And I totally get it. I know you don't want, we love to stay with our group. Even if it's the wrong group for us, we love the people we run in. We spend so much time with them. Let's see. Did I answer that one? Yeah. So yeah, do what you need. But if you can take in fewer gels, then more, all the better in training, not racing, but in training on your longer effort. So that, as a matter of fact, even if you burn out and hit the wall, the last mile when you finish and you're really, really pushing yourself at high heart rate to finish, there is a theory that bonking can, like a lot of things, if you break up muscle tissue from lifting weights, your muscle grows bigger to compensate for the strain you put upon that muscle, right? That's called hypertrophy, is growing muscles. Similar to glycogen consumption, the theory is, I haven't really seen science on this definitive study, but I know a lot of people who actually do this. They will run too fast until they hit the wall. After an hour and 40 minutes, they'll hit the wall because they've been going too fast at like 10K pace on maybe a midweek training run, not necessarily a long run, but this is the theory. So they run out of glycogen so that their body will then absorb more glycogen because they'll drink or eat carbohydrate. When we're going to have a ton of carbs, we have popcorn for you guys with salt at the finish line, tons of it. We have electrolyte, we have bars, easy up bars at the finish line, tons of it for you guys, for everybody at the finish line. Anyway, they take in carbohydrate right after they finish to absorb it immediately and expand that range of carbohydrate that they have. So that's the theory. In practice, on a long run, you do want to finish the long run. You do want to maintain lower heart rate. But even if you screw it up and you're really pushing the last mile or two or three, at a higher elevated heart rate because you're really depleting your glycogen resources, there is even a benefit to that, theoretically. So it's all good, but take in as few amount of gels as you can in training, because you're training, you're not racing your training, you're racing your races, hopefully. Far too many people race their training, which makes no sense. Bertina, so do you eat some kind of fat on Saturday training days? If so, what kind of fat would you eat while doing the mileage? I've heard different stories on this, but basically the key is we humans, all of us, have a fair volume of fat that we just absorb, we have within us. I mean, if you get like bodybuilders will get down to like 1 to 3% body fat, which is really kind of dangerous. These huge muscle-bound bodybuilders, because they just want to show off muscles. 0 fat, they want to dehydrate themselves. They'll drink alcohol before competition to dehydrate themselves, just to show their muscle, their lean, serious lean muscle mass. And a lot of them have just passed out on stage. You know, that happens because their fat consumption has gotten so low, their fat reserve has gotten so low that they just pass out, on stage. Now that's bodybuilding. We don't ever want to go near that low a fat reserve, right? We want normal fat reserves. I even heard Mark Allen, famous coach for triathlon and athlete in triathlon, Ironman. He won Ironman 6 times at Kona. He even said to one of the guys who was racing Kona that he wasn't fat enough. This is an Ironman who went on to win 2 Ironman races after he told him this. But he said, you're too thin to win the Ironman. You need fat reserves. Right. And I'm not just talking about Ironman, triathlon, also marathon is as well. Now you don't want to be, a lot bigger. That even so, you can still benefit from that, but you will be slower because more weight. Regardless, you don't want to be like bodybuilders. Your bodybuilders are not going to finish a marathon when they're at that kind of a low reservoir of fat. We all need healthy reserve of fat. And that will take you through the marathon. You don't really need to consume fat. There is the theory that fat consumption will slow carbohydrate intake, absorption rate. But, you don't really need to take in fat. You could take in, I have benefited from, pardon me. I have taken in some nuts, while I was walking through a marathon on an Ironman, just because I felt I needed some extra calories, and you get more calories from eating fats than you do from carbohydrate. Actually, let me explain that. That gets more complicated. You take in more slowly absorbable calories from fat than you do carbohydrate. Carbohydrate you use much more quickly than you do fat. However, carbohydrate, the volume of carbs on the volume of calories for carbohydrate are higher than the volume of calories per fat, but the volume of calories per fat per pound is actually more. It's more of a condensed resource for fuel. I'm not even going to bother explaining that. Anyway, so yeah, I just felt I needed to get in some calories, and I did have some nuts with salt, which helps. During an Ironman, while I just stopped and walked for a while. And then after I was done eating, I just slowly started running again. And, that helped me, just getting in higher volume of, food, but it's very individualized. You don't really need to take in fat for marathon. Again, it's a very individualized thing. And that was an Ironman that I was doing. I had gotten off the bike. I was on the run. And so there you go. Which flavors of electrolyte and goo will they have on the marathon? Right now, I'm really not sure. I'm sorry, Alana, I can't answer that question. I will hopefully find out in the next few weeks. I'm not sure that they even know themselves right now, to be honest. Paul, I'll have to jump off. Thank you. As always, great talk. Oh, Paul, thanks if you see the recording of this for being on. Tanya, thank you. Oh, good. Okay, Roxana, thank you. Oh, good. I answered your questions. Good. It's tough to know. Usually I always like to ask a question before I answer one, and you can't really do that with the chat, just to define, make sure I got the question right. Aaliyah, I usually feel GI discomfort. Oh, good question. I usually feel GI discomfort around mile 16, 18. Is that because I'm not taking in enough water with my carbs? How do I calculate how much water along with carbs, gels, electrolyte per hour? Target marathon time is 5.5 hours. Well, your target marathon time is pretty much, there's this, we were talking about this the other day. They have done a statistical analysis of the LA Marathon, and they find something like 4 to 6 hours is really the peak of that bell-shaped curve. So 5.5 hours is really right around that peak of that bell-shaped curve where most people are coming in. So very fast, it's much less, and then right in that window, 4 to 6 hours, is that peak when the most people come in. So you are going to be with a mob of the biggest mob of people on that bell-shaped curve of finishers. You will not be alone at all. But regardless, to answer your question, it could be that you're not taking enough water, but that could be completely separate from the GI discomfort that you're receiving at around mile 16, 18. It could be that what you're taking in doesn't really agree with your stomach. I'd have to ask if the GI discomfort, it's pain in your stomach, does it come along with nausea? Nausea might mean that you're not, one, either getting in enough minerals, which would have nothing to do with GI discomfort, it has to do with nausea, or two, you're taking in too many carbohydrate per hour. If you're over that 60 gram per hour rate of carbohydrate intake, over 66 grams of carbohydrate per hour, especially, most people are going to start feeling nauseous. Now, that's not GI discomfort, that's nausea, but I throw that out there in case you're also feeling nauseous. But GI discomfort might be that whatever it is that you're taking in is something that over a period of time just doesn't really appeal to your stomach. For example, and I don't like putting down anybody's product. I cannot do Gatorade. I start getting GI discomfort for Gatorade after several miles. I'll start getting jittery when I drink Gatorade. Every other water table over, 20 miles, I'll start getting jittery and a little GI discomfort, and it's just an uncomfortable feeling. I've done 2 marathons that way with Gatorade, and I've done all the rest of my marathons without Gatorade, and I did not feel that discomfort or jittery feeling that I have with Gatorade. So it just might be the product. Everyone is different. It's trial and error. If you're taking in whatever it is that you're taking in, and we don't really know that from this chat, you may want to trial and error, try something different. If gels like goo or Cliff Shots or Power Gel, if those high glycemic gels, which most of us take and do okay with, I'm fine with all those gels. I'm fine with goo. I have no problem with goo. I take tons of it. It is like taking a cookie, but because your heart rate is a little elevated, your body absorbs, your absorption rate of carbohydrate is alarmingly high during higher heart rate. Even high heart rate walking, run, walk, or running. So you can absorb things like really cookies. The only reason we don't eat cookies throughout the marathon is because it's a solid, and again, your stomach is diverting blood away from your stomach, so it's not as efficient, like I just said. And so we use gels. Gels are just like cookies. They have high fructose, and they're quickly absorbed. So take a look at what it is that you're doing. Try something different. You might even want to try baby food, which is really just mulched fruit. Now, fruit is 2 parts glucose and 1 part fructose, where gels are more fructose and less glucose. So fruit, or anything with more glucose, these are sugars, combinations of sugars, is more absorbable because our bodies are more accustomed to taking in real food like fruit, right? So if you're getting GI discomfort from gels and higher fructose, things like gels or drink or whatever, try maybe baby food, something with higher volume of glucose. It doesn't have glucose fructose on the packet, but there are, baby food, fruit. Look for the highest grams of calorie, the highest caloric count, the highest grams that you can find in a packet. They make these little packets with the plastic knobs on top that you kind of feed your little infant with the little, they're like little plastic tubes. They're gel packets with a little plastic tube on the end with a knob on the top. And they're great. They fit in any pocket just like a gel would. Try that out. I knew one woman that did weird. I can't recommend it because it's highly acidic. She did orange slices, and she couldn't do anything else. Horrible GI discomfort, diarrhea, all sorts of problems by mile 16. And she started doing she sliced up a bunch of orange slices, put them in plastic bags, Ziploc plastic bags. She had 4 plastic bags with her throughout the marathon. Each quarter of the race, she consumed another bag of orange slices, and that worked for her. It's high fiber, which is difficult to consume. It's higher acid, vitamin C, acidic acid. What is vitamin C? Is that right? Acidic acid? Citric acid. What am I thinking? Citric acid, high acid, but for her, it worked. I can't recommend that for anybody, but for that woman, it worked great. So try different things, trial and error, and the long runs are really the time to test out this stuff. For somebody like you, I would say take in a little more just to try different things, during those long runs. Hopefully less than what you'll do on race day, but on the long training runs this Saturday, and then 2 Saturdays from now, 3 Saturdays from now. Excuse me, that would be 3 Saturdays and 4 Saturdays from now, because 2 Saturdays from now is the taper workout, shorter distance. But yeah, it's trial and error. It's and start now. See what you can come up with, because we are going 19 miles, or 18, depending on the group you're in, 18 miles. Anyway, there you go. Hope that answered that one, sort of, kind of. Oh yeah, you're going to be out there quite a long time Saturday. You're at 5.5 hours, right? I forgot. Bertina, thank you. Alana, nope, thank you. Lillette, thanks, Coach David and everyone. Lillette, hi. What do you normally eat pre-run when training versus race day? Same thing. Whatever you eat, this is a great question. Whatever you eat, it just says iPhone, so I'm not sure who this is, but that's okay. This is a good question. Whatever you eat in training that works for you to get you through, 18, 19, 20 miles, whatever these next long runs are for you, do that for your race. This is one, mostly carbs. It's going to be mostly carbs. You want to absorb carbs for dinner. Don't go overboard. I know people stuff themselves with pasta the night before, which is like, you don't want to wake up bloated and gassy and, like you have a lead weight in your stomach. Don't overdo this. But yeah, carbo loading before training is good. During training, however, you're going to need those carbs. Right now I'm using carbs. I'm just sitting here. Right now, all of us are consuming carbohydrate in the form of glycogen, just sitting at low heart rate. As we go higher and higher and higher heart rate, we consume more and more and more and more, okay, per minute, per hour, whatever. So yeah, figure out, and this is different for everybody. If I ate oatmeal, it would take me a good hour and a half to digest it before I could really run. I remember eating a big oatmeal thing on vacation, and because that's what was there. I went out the door and oh my God, I felt like I had this lead weight, I couldn't run. But that's me. A lot of people, oatmeal, great. Eat oatmeal, a huge bowl of the stuff, out the door, you're running, you're fine. For me, it takes me an hour and a half to digest it. But you definitely want to eat similar things that you're going to do on race day. Test it out. Again, it's all trial and error. I know former Coach Connolly, who you met when we were last at Dodger Stadium, he always swore by cream of wheat. I have never had cream of wheat in my life. For him, it works. Oh no, he had this huge meal though. It was, I can't even remember all of it. It was like cream of wheat and toast and a glass of milk and some eggs or something. I don't even remember. It was mostly carbohydrate, almost all carbohydrate. It was this massive meal that I couldn't possibly consider digesting. So it's really individual. What you're doing that's getting you through these long efforts, as long as you're doing well on these long efforts, run, walk, or walk, keep doing it. Or try something new to test the waters, but don't go crazy on race day and, start doing something you've never done before. There is something to carbo loading for a few days before. You don't want to do carbo loading over the years has changed. And I don't want to get in too much into carbo loading because then again, it is very much an individualized thing. And to get it really right, you almost need, a dietitian to work with you. But the essential concept used to be is no fats and all carbs. Well, we now know that you're now training your body to use carbs are not fat, so that's out the window. They don't do that anymore. They don't do carbs only. Excuse me. They don't do well, what they used to do was even worse before that. Before that, they used to do no carbs at all and only fat. And then 3 days before, they would do all carbs to really load carbs, which just shocked your system. I don't recommend that. And then they started doing all carbs. And you don't want to do that. You want a reasonable blend of, yes, more carbs, like 60% carbohydrate, 30% fats, and 10% protein, something like that, 3 days. Even in general, after and before these longer efforts, something like that. But again, it's such an individual thing. I'll tell you this, everyone I ever heard of is on the ketogenic diet. That means like really few carbohydrate, little carbs. And there's nothing wrong with carbs. There's carbs in, like I said, in meat. I'm not a meat eater, so I can't recommend it, but there's carbs in so much stuff. And it's not bad necessarily for you. Where we get into trouble with carbs is taking in too much, that by the end of the day, we've taken in so many more carbs than what we metabolize that it turns into fat. And also carbs come in negative forms like cookies and cake and ice cream. And you get the picture, because those carbs come with bad fat. And so somehow carbs have gotten a bad name. Anyway, there you go. We need the people I know on the ketogenic diet with a tiny volume of carbs, if even at all carbohydrate, none of them can run or run, walk, or walk at the fastest level that they could previously when they were taking in carbohydrate. Now, yes, ketones can become carbs, right? Excuse me. You can turn fat into ketones. Ketones can be used instead of carbohydrate. Yes, that's true. But it's still not carbohydrate. Carbohydrate can be utilized at high heart rate, and people are not able to go as fast as long without carbohydrate as they are on ketones, on that ketogenic diet. You can get through a marathon on the ketogenic diet. You won't be as fast. Speed work will not be as fast. No question. Everyone I've ever talked to has the same response. Even somebody I talked to last Sunday who's on a very low carb diet said the same exact thing. She offered that information up to me. So basically, yeah, again, do race day what you're doing in training for breakfast, but it's a trial and error. It's very different for everybody, especially any kind of nutrition is so different. Ironman competitors, pro athletes will have like 1,000 calories for breakfast at like 3:30 in the morning. They'll get up then at 6 and eat like 300 more calories. I'm not recommending that to anybody, but that's how different things are for different people. So do you recommend, this is Ollie. Ollie, do you recommend taking a GU 30 minutes before race starts like the package recommends? Actually, not really. Sorta, but no. Here's the problem. It's high glycemic, you eat a box of cookies, it tires you out, right? The reason a box of cookies tires you out is because it's high glycemic, similar to gels, high glycemic food, meaning high processed, high fructose, really, that's what you're talking, high amounts of fructose, high sugars, high volume of sugars, in this case, processed. GU is mostly maltodextrin, which is more fructose than glucose. Maltodextrin is the first ingredient in GU. And it's nothing wrong with it. It's just sugar, Anyway, more fructose than glucose, like I said. But your body, as you start running at high heart rate, right, your body is able to metabolize it, right? If you're standing there in the corral, your body is not really able to metabolize it that quickly. It does become blood sugar, but then if you're standing around for a long period of time, like 30 minutes, now there's more to this, so hear me out. If you're standing around like 30 minutes, that blood sugar, like a cookie, like eating a box of cookies, is going to spike your insulin. Your insulin is going to get rid of sugar, and that's what tires you out. So 30 minutes before, if you take a gel, you could start the race feeling kind of tired because your insulin levels have been spiked, and that's going to cause your energy levels to crash. Got it? However, something that I do absolutely, and I do highly recommend. Now, again, this is trial and error. You can do it this Saturday or Sunday right before we begin our long run. If you're in Newport Beach, it would be Sunday. If you're here in Santa Monica, it would be Saturday. I do, when the national anthem starts playing, or even when I'm, way back there, and the gun goes off and it's blaring, "I love LA," is the music going across the speakers, blasting. Right then and there, when the people start walking toward the starting line, because, you don't run right away unless you're like in Corral A, which only 3 hour and 3:10 groups are going to be in, along with the people who win the race, that's when I would take a gel before the race starts. Yes, but 30 minutes, that's a little long. 10 minutes, 5 minutes, yeah, because it's glowing in your bloodstream. It's not spiking your insulin levels yet. And you're soon going to be running or walking or run walking at a little higher heart rate. So that's not going to spike. Your absorption rate will be higher. So your insulin rate will not increase and tire you out. Hopefully that long harangue explained it. So 30 minutes is a bit much. 5 minutes, or right as the gun goes off, or when the national anthem is playing, great time to do it. Highly recommend. Take in a gel, take an extra gel with you, hold it in your hand. If you can't, fit it in your pockets. And take it right before the start. But 30 minutes, I don't know, that's a little much. I do recall bringing so many gels with me on a race, just so if I dropped one, I'd have enough. My plan B, you always want a plan B. And I had an old pair of shorts. And as I ran, the drawstring somehow became undone, and my shorts were slowly sliding down. I kept pulling them. I spent a half a marathon doing this, Anyway, the things that go wrong on a marathon. I was having clothing failure. So hopefully that answers that. 30 minutes, 5, sure. Chavez, off topic, but do you still have the Excel marathons calculator spreadsheet? If so, may I please have it emailed to me? Yeah, I do. And in fact, I'm going to send it out again probably next week. We're still like, what, a little over 6 weeks to the LA Marathon. I usually send that out like 3 weeks before the LA Marathon to all the pace leaders, and I'll put it in their newsletter that they get. And anyone who wants it, you can send me an email. I'll send it to you. Glad to do it now. I still have it from last year. The course is the same. Absolutely glad to share that. Anybody. I'll even post it eventually on Facebook. Not so much now, but later on. Dwayne, no, that was actually on topic, Chavez, so no problem. That's the kind of question we like. Eat breakfast about an hour earlier on race day, so I bring a small coffee cup with oatmeal to sip on while waiting for race to start, about 100 calories or so. Great idea. Everybody is such an individual. I usually, this is me talking, this is my thing. I don't recommend this to anybody. I really do not recommend, in fact, most of you will probably be disgusted when you hear this. I always stopped eating. This is not the disgusting part. I always stop eating an hour and a half before a marathon, and I get online to go to the bathroom. This is my ritual. It works. That is me. But what I found worked for me is that I would have a rice and bean burrito with a little guacamole in it. And about an hour, 2 hours before I would start eating it, I would make sure I'm done with it by an hour and a half before. Though that was me. So the fact that you're eating 100 calories or so, Dwayne, before the race, great. Small cup of coffee, they give you a little adrenaline from caffeine. And that's another topic on caffeine, which we'll hit in a few weeks. Actually, we should talk now, but hang on. So that's what I did, but I don't recommend that to anybody. And in fact, while I was eating this, people were looking at me, what are you going to do with that? Are you going to eat that? And they were kind of like, oh my God, he's eating it. So I can't recommend that, but it worked for me. Last minute carbs. Before the race, I don't do that. I didn't do that in training. I just knew I had so many extra hours to get to racing from my morning breakfast that I needed that extra something, the same way Dwayne needs an extra 100 calories. I've even taken in like bars, but again, I stopped. For me, I needed that hour and a half. I needed to go to the bathroom before. So that was me. Everybody's different. Like I said, really kind of trial and error. And the more you do marathons, the better you get at this, because you find what you, the individual, needs. That's so critical. Oh, iPhone, thank you. You are welcome. Ferris, will this recording be available to view? Apologies, I arrived late. Ferris, absolutely. I'm going to post it on our Facebook site. If you're not on our Facebook site, go on Facebook to the page, LA Roadrunners group page. That's the name of our page. There is an LA Roadrunners page, but we are LA Roadrunners group page. And you'll be able to see this video, probably about 2 hours after we hang up. Lisa, oh wait, will this be Dwayne? I have to log off. See you all Saturday. Dwayne, take care. Lisa, thank you all for the information. Lisa, you are welcome. Ollie, thank you. Ferris, thank you. Cynthia, so informative, Coach. Thank you. Any questions, either audibly or in chat? And actually I can, Alana, thank you, Coach, super helpful. Let me really quick discuss one topic that was kind of brought up, and then, we'll end it if nobody has any more questions. Caffeine. If you're going to take caffeine, spikes your adrenaline levels, it forces your subconscious, this part of your brain that functions to shut you down, that has these governors on you, that holds you back, that causes you to bonk or crash or burn, whatever you want to call it, that holds you back. You can override those governors and have more energy output by taking in caffeine. I highly recommend it toward the end of your race, like mile 20, 22, even 24. But in order to be able to utilize caffeine efficiently, you need to slowly taper yourself. And I mean slowly, or you're going to get severe headaches. Because as good as coffee is, and I do think there are a lot of antioxidants, there are benefits to coffee. If you're taking in 4 or 5 cups a day, that's, you're going to be jittery. That's not a good thing. That's stress. You're inducing in yourself with caffeine, not good. But 2 cups of coffee a day is not a bad thing. But in order to use the caffeine in a gel or whatever form you're taking caffeine in, there are even mineral pills. Salt Stick makes mineral pills with caffeine in them if you get that version. You need to slowly taper off the caffeine for a couple of weeks of no caffeine. So start now, like drop your levels a 1/4 cup for like a couple days, and a 1/4 cup more for a couple days, and a 1/4 cup, a 1/4 cup less for a couple of days, quarter cup less for a couple of days, a quarter cup less for a couple of days, and slowly wean yourself off coffee or tea. So you're at 0 caffeine for 2 to 4 weeks. Keep in mind, you'd want to taper off completely like 2, 3, 4 weeks from now. So start today. The longer you're off caffeine, the more caffeine will impact, in a good way, your marathon race if you're taking in caffeine. Hopefully that was helpful. Any other questions, written or verbal? Again, you can slide your cursor across the screen and click on the mute button, and that red line will go away and you'll be able to talk. Any other questions? Ferris, do you recommend salt tablets for cramps? Well, yeah and no. Here's the thing, is they have done studies on people who are cramping, and they have found in studies that people who are cramping weren't depleted in sodium at all. So you're cramping for different reasons. You're cramping mostly because the theory is, they're not 100% sure, the theory is you're cramping because your muscle is fatigued in some way. Now, if you're depleted in minerals like sodium, potassium, even calcium to some degree, those are electrolytes that your body uses for neurological function. In other words, instead of they're called electrolytes because they take kind of like an electric pathway, and they take information from your brain and they kind of send it to your muscle, and they fire the muscle, and the muscle pushes you forward or up or down or whatever. So you need minerals. You sweat sodium out. So you need sodium and potassium, all that stuff. You sweat it out. So on a hot day, absolutely, you would need sodium to intake. Now, here's the problem, or this is something that I have found, this is me. I have found that a lot of times, I mean, most cases, if you take in sodium, having nothing to do with lacking sodium in terms of cramping, that's not necessarily the cause. But if you take in sodium, and I think this is where it gets confusing, if you take in electrolytes, sodium, potassium, calcium, those are all electrolytes, mostly sodium. If you take in salt, the cramping will go away, at least temporarily, because now you're sending a ton of stuff down your neurological pathway that gets your muscles firing again, right? Because cramping is a seizing of your muscles. They're not firing, they're stuck. That's what cramping is. So, yeah, you can take in sodium tablets, especially when you're cramping. Something that really works, and this is really weird, and there is science behind this, tests results significantly suggest for most people, this is really weird, pickle juice. You could take a normal jar of pickles and pour the juice into like the equivalent of a 5-hour energy drink bottle. I'm not saying the 5-hour energy drink is what you're drinking. You know, once you've consumed it, it's an empty bottle, like, you know, like that big. And pour that pickle juice in there and take it during your race. If you start feeling the beginnings of cramping, it really, for most people, will help get rid of cramps. And the theory is that there's something to do with that sour flavor of pickle juice that generates muscle efficiency and gets rid of cramping. No one knows why. It's completely beyond the realm of science as to why. But there is statistical analysis that shows pickle juice will help in a majority of the people out there with cramping. So there's a weird topic. It's a good topic. It's an important topic. A lot of people suffer from cramping. Recommend pickle juice, or definitely you need minerals on a hot day. You do get sodium, you do get potassium, those electrolytes from electrolyte, hence the name electrolytes. That's what you're getting. That's that and carbohydrate. That's what you get from electrolyte on the course. You do get electrolytes, sodium, potassium, all those electrolytes from goo. That's another reason we take in goo. It's gel form, just like electrolyte of minerals and carbs. That's what it's all about. That's what we need. So even if you're taking in a ton of gels and a ton of electrolyte, or if in the past you were doing Gatorade, whatever drink you were doing, you may still have cramping, and it may have nothing whatsoever to do with sodium intake or enough sodium. But I do find taking in sodium will subside that spasming of cramping, because it gets those electrolytic pathways kind of moving again, sort of. And this is just my empirical vision, what I see very consistently by giving somebody a mineral pill and having them take it in within a very short amount of time, cramping stops. So at least for temporarily. But I'm sorry, Ferris, you're dealing with cramping, but there are ways around it. Pickle juice, just get a little empty bottle, and pickle juice, carry it with you if you can. Anybody else? That's the end of my questions. Anyone, any more questions? Verbally or chat wise, written? Do you recommend salt tablets for, I just got that one. Anybody else? Going once, going twice, going 3 times. Okay, I thank everybody for joining us. We had over 24 people online for quite a while here. And I thank all of you for listening to all of this. I am gonna save it and post it. And I am stopping the recording right now. So here we stop.